Hi, I'm Lex and welcome to my channel. Growing up as a kid, I hated tomatoes. I could not eat them. I would pick them off of anything that they were on. And that's because I had a kind of a traumatic experience with tomatoes when I was really young. I was about 3 years old, and the story as I understand it is I ate a tomato stem, you know, the big green part of a stem. I don't really know how it happened, but apparently it happened, and my mom was really concerned that I was poisoned. Took me to the hospital, and I remember being fed that awful charcoal drink in order to like induce vomiting and all of that. And so I was 3 years old, and I still remember the whole hysteria around the situation. And then after that, I was completely terrified of eating tomatoes. I just would not eat them. I didn't want to have anything to do with them, pick them off everything, and that continued most of my life into my early 20s. And then at some point I was like, okay, I need to get over this fear of tomatoes. This is irrational. I'm adult. I can eat tomatoes. So like I said, early 20s, I started to accept tomatoes on things. So like raw tomatoes sliced on a salad or on a sandwich. I was okay with that. I got myself to a point where I could tolerate that and I would eat it, and it wasn't terrible and I didn't die. And then I was like, okay, let's just keep pushing it one step further and having tomatoes just as a meal or however I want to have them. The love and switch to tomatoes didn't take place until I started actually growing them myself. It was about 2015 when I had my first vegetable garden. It was really small where we were living. It was kind of like a little apartment side garden, but I wanted to try growing food. And I grew some tomato plants that year along with some other things. And when I got my first harvest of tomato plants, that's kind of what changed it all for me. Having that first tomato that I grew myself was like life-changing in a way, because I had cared for this plant, I grew it, I tended to it, I harvested it, and then now I have this fruit that was mine. And I was so excited to try it, and it was delicious and it was so good, and I just wanted to have more because it was really special and I felt proud that I actually grew something. So ever since then, I've always grown tomatoes in my garden, and last year was the biggest tomato planting that I had done. Grew about 35 tomato plants last year in my garden, and that's when I started sharing all of my gardening on YouTube. So if you go back to my 2020 videos, you'll see the tomatoes from that year. I just grew a couple varieties, maybe 5. Nothing too fancy. A lot of them are pretty basic. What common varieties? Your big red tomatoes. And what I really wanted to do this year was expand my tomato variety and just try all the different kinds and really get a taste of what my favorite was, because I had spent a lot of years of my life never eating tomatoes. There are so many different kinds out there. So I was curious, how many tomato varieties are there in the world? And according to Wikipedia, which may or may not be the most reliable source, but that was the first result, was there's 10,000 tomato varieties or cultivars in the entire world, which is incredible if you think about it. Because here in the United States, you only see just a handful of varieties on the grocery store shelves. And because there's so many varieties, I wanted to focus on growing a lot of different varieties in my garden this year. And so I have started from seed and grown 48 different tomato varieties. And the purpose of this video and series is taste testing and trying them all out as they come to be ripened. And so today I have a handful of kinds that I am going to be talking about, letting you see what they look like, and doing a little taste test and trying to describe at least what they taste like to me. And we have a whole plethora of things to try on here. Beautiful assortment of 10 different tomato varieties. Pink bumblebee. These ones are the firefly. These dark ones here are the black cherry, Brad's Atomic Grape, Barry's Crazy Cherry, Sweetie Cherries, the Midnight Snacker, yellow pears, blueberry cream, and the blueberries. So I am growing in Zone 6A in Northeast Ohio, right in a very cool location. We get some cold winters here and a shorter-ish growing season, and so I had to start my tomatoes from seed. I did that in, towards middle of March. I think it was around March 20th is when I usually start my tomato seeds. And so now it's August 14th and I have been picking on the cherry tomatoes for a few weeks now. The paste tomatoes came in right after that, and I'm just starting to get some of my nice slicers are ripening up, but there are plenty of green fruits still out on the vines, which I will be sharing my reviews on those at another time once they're ready. I'm gonna start with the Sweetie cherry tomato, and this is probably just a really common variety of cherry tomato. I grew them last year. I like how they taste. I thought, you know, they taste really good. Ah! Cherry tomatoes are rolly. Oh my gosh. So Sweetie cherry, pretty basic. They have a lot of juice in them. On first bite, I mean, it just tastes like a normal cherry tomato. It's not overly sweet. It's not really bitter. It's kind of just like a mild flavor right in between, but it's a good snacking tomato. The next one is the Barry's Crazy Cherry. Now, Barry's Crazy Cherry is super prolific. All on the plant in the garden, it is just covered with these really delicious cherry tomatoes. When they ripen, they're this nice yellow gold color, and they're very sweet. Biting into one of these reminds me of biting into a green grape. It has that tomato flavor. They're so good. I would definitely grow these again. The next one is the Brad's Atomic Grape. So these have been really popular in recent years, I've seen, and everyone has been talking about the Brad's Atomic Grape, and you have to grow it, so I grew it. And when they ripen, I had to kind of figure this out. They will have the dark purple anthocyanin coloring, but a lot of it is still kind of green. But it has really cool coloring, variegation. It's got like purple and green and orange. They actually take a long time to ripen. There's a lot of times I wasn't even sure if they were ready, so I have to do the squish test, kind of squish a little bit to see if it's soft. I haven't loved these. So while it's like a big size, I just don't love the flavor. I don't think there's a whole lot going on with this that makes me just like feel, wow, this is a great tomato. I want to eat this all the time. It's just big. You can see the juice inside. But really, there's not much going on with this. It's kind of bland, honestly. So I was a little disappointed that this tomato didn't taste better, but that's just my opinion. These are yellow pear tomatoes, and they are pear-shaped. These tomatoes are also very prolific. My plants are covered in these. They're not super juicy, which is nice. There's a lot of flesh. There's a lot of meat inside. They're not very sweet. It's definitely another mild variety, but overall, pretty good. There's definitely much more flavor in those than the Brad's Atomic Grape. These pretty ones are called Pink Bumblebee, and these are much bigger compared to some of the other cherry tomatoes. So in comparison, these are the Pink Bumblebee and these are the Sweetie cherries. So these are much bigger. And they're super beautiful. And just look at the coloring on this. Biting into this reminds me of a watermelon. It's got a nice even split of juice, but also very meaty. This plant has also been pretty prolific, and I've gotten a lot off of this, and they just taste so good. If a tomato and a watermelon had a baby, I would imagine this is it. My chickies have come to say hello. Hi, chickies. They're waiting for tomato handouts. I've been spoiling them. This pretty one is the blueberries. So they're called blueberries. They're cherry tomatoes. And when they ripen, they're this really pretty deep red color with some of the dark purple blushing around the top. So they're very pretty. Another very prolific tomato plant. Tons growing out there. These ones are a little sour. We have had rain the last few days, so I'm trying to maybe think, well, maybe the rain has watered these down a little bit, but a lot of my other tomatoes don't taste over watery, but these have, and they have since they started to produce. And I've also kind of been disappointed with how these, I thought a blueberry tomato would be really sweet, but these are not very sweet. Very juicy. It almost reminds me of like a fennel-y type taste, like that anise fennel taste. I kind of get that as an aftertaste with these. So if you like that, you might like these, but I'm not overly impressed with the blueberries. I need to wash my palette. These are black cherry. These are also really big. They're similar in size to the bumblebee. Actually, they're a little bit smaller than the bumblebee. Still bigger than the sweetie. So if we have a size comparison, this is the bumblebee, this is the black cherry, and this is the sweetie. And the black cherries are very dark purple, kind of that smoky purple color when they're ripe. This one is also kind of normal to me. It is juicy. It does give me taste of like a kind of a darker grape. Not like a blue grape, but like a purple grape. It's good, but I'm just not like over the moon for it. Would I grow it again? Probably. But if I had limited space, I would definitely pick something else like the bumblebee cherry over that. The last 3 of the cherry tomatoes that I've grown were actually given to me by a friend. Her name is Carol, and I met her through the Friends of Roots and Refuge Facebook group, and found out that she was local to me, and we got to meet, and she actually gifted me 3 different tomato plants, so 3 different varieties. So these next 3 that I'm going to talk about are from Carol, so thank you, Carol. These ones are called Firefly. These are another bigger cherry tomato. They are this nice yellow color when they're ripe, and in comparison, this is the biggest one, is the bumblebee. They're a little bit smaller, but still a good size. These remind me of a white wine.
They taste like wine?
They remind me of a white wine. These are very sweet. These are really good. I would definitely grow these again. So thank you, Carol, for bringing me these. So next are the blueberry cream. These are different than the blueberry I showed earlier. When these are ripe, they have that dark purple blush on top. The bottoms are more yellow, so that's where it gets the cream from. Blueberry cream. And in comparison to the blueberry, this one tastes a lot better. This one has a lot more flavor. It's still pretty juicy, but it's sweet. So if I had to go for the blueberry cream or the blueberry cream would win. Coming down to the end of all of the cherry tomatoes, which has been a lot. I have 10 different cherry tomato varieties that I'm growing. So, plethora of colors and tastes and sizes. The last that I have to show you is the Midnight Snacker. Oh, are you gonna do that now? Guinea! So we'll do our size comparison of these next to the bumblebee. So still bumblebee wins of all of them, but this is also a pretty big size. So the Midnight Snacker, it actually reminds me of a mini indigo apple, which an indigo apple is a slicing tomato. I mean, this is much bigger, obviously, but the colors are very similar. We have that really dark purple blush on top, the anthocyanin, and then a nice red color on the bottom when they're ripe. And the taste test. So this one is very meaty. There's a lot going on this. It's got a good, nice, rich tomato flavor. Right in that mid-range, not too sweet, not too bitter. This is a really nice tasting tomato. I would grow these again. I do seem to have preference for tomatoes that are darker in general. I like the really dark ones, but I also have preference for the really bright yellow ones too. The ones that are kind of in between, take them or leave them. So that is my review of 10 different cherry tomato varieties in my series of taste testing 48 different kinds of tomatoes that I'm growing this year in my garden. Now that I'm filled up on cherry tomatoes, I'm going to take a break before I get into the slicers. So make sure you subscribe to be able to be notified and come back for more tomato variety taste testing and garden videos throughout the season. My name is Lex, and do something you love today. Talk to you later. Bye. And Icy likes tomatoes, huh? Is that good? Is that delicious? You like that tomato? Do another? He's a good girl, huh? Sit. That's a good girl. So the Midnight Snacker is another one of these bigger cherry tomatoes. I think it's yelling at you, Mom. Guinea! Shush! You tell her.